Hello everyone, Miss Carol here. Thanks for joining me. I'm so sorry that I've missed the last few weeks, but we've had a little sickness here at our house, but we seem to be on the mend now, so I'm looking forward to starting up our lessons again. We have a little catching up to do though, don't we? So in case you've forgotten, let's just do a little remembering on what our lesson was about last time. One of the favorite stories in the Bible for most people, and that's the story of Goliath and David, right? If you remember, Goliath for 40 days had been challenging the Israelites for someone to come and fight him. However, he was a giant, wasn't he? 9 feet and a half. Very tall, very mean looking, huh? And no one was brave enough, not King Saul and not David's brothers, and no one in the army was brave enough to go and fight. But when David arrived, he said, I'll do it. But he didn't go out there with a sword, did he? He didn't go out there with a spear. He took his slingshot and he took 5 smooth stones, didn't he? Because he knew that it didn't really matter what he fought with. He knew God was going to win that battle. It wasn't going to be up to him. It was up to God. What God required of him was that he be brave and he do his best. God would do the rest. And sure enough, he took that one stone, didn't he? And that stone landed right in the middle of Goliath's forehead. And he fell forward face down, and David cut off his head with Goliath's own spear, on sword, didn't he? That's right. So now Saul says, I want you to stay in my palace now. Don't go back home anymore. I want you to stay here with me. You're a warrior now. And so David stayed in the palace with the king from then on. And if you remember, Saul had a son named Jonathan, which made him a prince because he's the son of a king, wasn't he? And Jonathan was very brave as well, a very brave man. And he wasn't evil like his father. And he always tried to do what was right. And because he and David were very much alike, they became very, very good friends. So much so that Jonathan made a promise with him and with David. And because Jonathan was the prince, he gave David some very important articles that were his. First of all, he gave him his robe, and to get the robe of a prince, that was important, wasn't it? And then he gave him his belt that he wore, probably where his sword went. But he also gave David his sword, and he gave him his bow and his arrow. Now, if you remember, Jonathan was also a warrior and a brave one, wasn't he? And so here he was giving away all of his weapons. But he wanted to show David how much he loved him and that he promised him they would always be friends. We don't know if Jonathan realized at this time that he was never going to get to be the king, even though he was the prince. But when his dad died, I think he knew, I'm not going to get to be the king. But did he know that maybe David was? We don't know. But they made a pact to always be friends, no matter what happened. Well, David he led some wars. The war broke out and David fought. He was put in charge of 1,000 men, and whatever he did, he usually won because God was with him. And women and children and all the people in the towns would sing his praises and say, Saul has killed his thousands of our enemies, but David has killed tens of thousands. How do you think that made King Saul feel? Yeah, he was already had that evil spirit, didn't he? God had already left Saul and gone into David, hadn't he? And so that just made him jealous, and that made him angrier. But whenever the evil spirit came on him, he still had David when he was around. He had him play for him, sing his music for him to calm him down. But one day, he was so angry thinking about David, that he took his spear and he threw it at David. In fact, he threw it at him twice, but David managed to avoid that spear. So David told his best friend Jonathan, he said, "You know what? I need to talk to you. Your dad is trying hard to kill me." And Jonathan said, "I can't believe that, David. I mean, my dad tells me everything, and I think he would have told me if he was trying to kill you." And David said, "Trust me. He tried twice already to kill me." He said, "Well, let me do this. Let me go and let me ask my father, and I'll get back with you. You hide while I do that." So David did. He waited for Jonathan to go to his dad, and Jonathan asked his father, "Is it true, Father? Are you really trying to kill David?" And King Saul said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Why, Father? Why would you do such a thing? Look at all the great things David has done for you. I mean, he killed Goliath and made you look like a great king because one of your warriors killed Goliath. And he's gone out and fought many battles for you, and he's always won. So why would you want to kill somebody? What has he ever done except do good things for you? What has he ever done to you? What would make you want to kill someone that's innocent?" And King Saul thought about that, and he said, "You're right, son. I shouldn't do that. And I'm going to make a promise to you that I'm never going to try to kill David again." I wonder if he's going to keep that promise. Well, Jonathan believed his dad. He believed he was really going to try and be good. So he goes back and he tells David, "All right, David, it's okay. You can come back to the palace now. My dad said that he's sorry and he's not going to try to kill you again." And so David came back to the palace. Once again, he began playing his harp and trying to soothe Saul whenever he was troubled. But once again, Saul tried to kill him, threw his spear at him. And this time, David ran away. He told Jonathan, "All right, Jonathan, your dad really is trying to kill me. He really is, I promise." And he said, "Well, let's do this. We began the New Moon Festival." And David said, "Yes, tell your father if I'm missing and he doesn't see me there, tell him that I had to go back to my home in Bethlehem for a feast there. And if he gets angry, then you'll know he is trying to kill me. But if he doesn't seem to care or even notice that I'm gone, then we know that I'm safe." Jonathan agreed to that plan. And so the next day was the New Moon Festival. And Saul asked. First day, Saul didn't ask, but he noticed, David isn't here. I wonder why he's not here. Because he was an important warrior, and he usually ate at the king's table. Well, he wasn't there. But Saul didn't say anything the first night. But the second day of the festival, once again, David's not there. And now Saul's beginning to wonder why. Why isn't he here with us? What's going on? So he asked Jonathan, "What's going on? Why isn't David here? Why isn't he eating with us?" And Jonathan said, "Well, he went home to Bethlehem to have a feast with his family. They asked him to come. And Saul got so angry that guess what? Now he tried to kill his very own son. He tried to kill Jonathan. Now Jonathan knows the truth. Okay. Dad really is trying to kill him. Now, when they made this plan that David was not going to be at the feast, Jonathan said, I want you to hide in the field by the rock Ezel. You hide there. And here's what's going to happen. I'm going to come out after the feast is over with my bow and arrow and with a young boy, and I'm going to shoot that arrow. And if I say to the boy, go and get my arrow, it's right in this side of the rock, then you know if it's closest to me, it's okay. My dad isn't trying to kill you. You can come back to the palace. But if I tell the boy, go and get my arrow, it's way beyond the rock, then you know you're going to have to run and hide from my father. He is trying to kill you. Now that's the plan they made. Well, of course, now after that feast, and his dad even tried to kill him, he knows, okay, he is trying to kill my best friend. So the next day he does just what he and David decided. He goes out into that field and he takes the young boy with him. And he shoots his arrow, and David waits, and he's hiding by the rock, and he's waiting to hear if he tells the boy, go and get the arrow. What if he says the arrow's on this side of the rock? Do you remember? That meant it was going to be okay. He could come back to the palace. King Saul wasn't trying to kill him. But what if he said it's beyond the rock? That means David's going to have to start running. Well, you know what he had to say, right? So he shot the arrow with his bow. And he tells the boy, go and get the arrow. It's beyond that rock. And the boy goes and gets it. And he sends the boy back to the palace. And he tells David to come out of hiding. And so they talk. And he tells David, I'm so sorry. You are so right. My dad is trying to kill you, and you're going to have to leave. You're going to have to run and hide. You cannot come back. He's going to keep searching for you, and he's going to keep trying to kill you. You're going to have to stay in hiding. Jonathan said, but let's remember the promise we made to each other, that we would always be best friends, and that no matter what happened to either one of us, we would be sure and take care of any family that the other one has. So if you die before me, I would take care of your family. But if I die before you, please take care of my family. Please take care of me and my family. And I think by now, Jonathan must have known that he was never ever going to be the king. I think he must have known that the kingdom was going to one day be David's. But I'm sure David, even though he knew Samuel anointed him and told him he would one day be king, I'm sure right now he's not feeling very much like he's actually going to ever get to do that. I mean, after all, the king is trying to kill him. David can't be king until King Saul dies. And instead, King Saul trying to kill him first. And I'm sure David was wondering, how is God going to make all this happen? But you know, not once did David ever really wish for King Saul to be dead. He just didn't want him chasing him. And he just didn't want to have to run and stay in hiding. But that's what happened. And at one point, before they said goodbye, they hugged. And they cried because they knew that they would probably never ever see each other again. As best friends, that was hard. But the Bible says they both cried, but Jonathan cried the most. So David has to run away. Now, if you were David, you couldn't run home because King Saul would definitely know that's where you were going. But who could he run to where he would be safe? Well, David decides he needs to run to Samuel. After all, wasn't it Samuel that anointed him to be the next king? So he runs to Samuel, and if you remember, Samuel's home was in Ramah. So he runs to Samuel and he tells Samuel what's happening. And Samuel agrees to hide him until King Saul found out. Some people told him, hey, David's down there at Ramah staying with Samuel. So Saul goes down there trying to kill him, but he wasn't successful. David got away again. And next week, we're going to find out what happens to David, all right? He can't go back to the palace. He can't go home because Saul will know where he is. So what is he going to do? What is he going to do with the rest of his life? How is he going to spend it? Well, we're going to have to find out what actually happens next week to David. I do have some sheets for you. I have 2 coloring sheets. One, there you go. King Saul's trying to throw it. Well, he did throw his spear, didn't he, at David? We have another one of when Jonathan gave David his robe and his belt, his sword, his bow, and his arrow. And then we have a word search as well. All right, so my goodness, this just isn't the way we thought this story was going to go, is it? Well, we'll just have to come back next week and see what actually happens with David. I hope you're all staying well and staying safe. I love you and I miss you. Till next week. Bye-bye.